It was 6 o'clock in the morning when I heard the pounding on the door. These weren't normal knocks, not the kind the mail carrier gives or a distracted neighbor. These were hard, insistent, desperate blows, the kind that yank you out of sleep with your heart racing, that sinking feeling that something awful is happening. I sat up in bed, confused, trying to figure out what was going on. It was still dark outside. The first light of dawn was just barely starting to filter through my bedroom curtains. Who could be knocking at this hour? I thought about ignoring it, about lying back down and pretending I hadn't heard a thing, but the pounding continued, growing more urgent, more frantic. I got up, put on the robe I always leave hanging next to the bed, and walked barefoot down the cold hallway of my house. Every step I took toward the door ratcheted up my nervousness. Something in the air felt strange, heavy, as if the morning itself knew this day wouldn't be like the others. I reached the front door and looked through the peephole. It was Arthur, my lifelong neighbor, the man who lived 3 houses down, the same man who'd helped me fix the yard after Elijah died 5 years ago. But this wasn't the calm, kind Arthur I knew. His face was pale, distraught. His eyes were wide open, filled with something I recognized immediately. Fear. Genuine, deep fear. The kind you can't fake. I opened the door slowly, just enough to see him better. He stepped forward, nearly tripping over his own words. "Alara, listen to me. Don't leave the house today. Please, trust me. Don't go out for any reason." His voice was trembling. Arthur never trembled. He was a man in his late 60s, a military veteran, someone who'd seen things in his life I couldn't even imagine. And here he was, begging me to listen to him with an urgency that chilled me to the bone. "What is it, Arthur? What are you talking about? What's wrong?" He glanced behind him at the empty street, as if he expected to see something or someone. Then he looked back at me, and for a moment I thought he was going to tell me everything. But he didn't. He just shook his head with an expression of anguish I'd never seen on him before. "I can't explain it now. Just stay inside. Lock the doors. Don't open up for anyone. Not even if they look like officials. Do you understand? Nobody." A shiver ran down my spine. Officials? What was he talking about? Why couldn't he just tell me what was happening? "Arthur, you're scaring me. Tell me." "You'll understand this afternoon. I promise you'll understand. But right now I need you to trust me. Please, Alara, please." And before I could answer, before I could demand a real explanation, he was already backing away, retreating down the driveway. I watched him disappear into the dimness of the morning, walking fast, constantly looking side to side, as if he were being pursued. I closed the door with shaky hands and stood there in the silence of my own home, trying to process what had just happened. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. What the heck was that? I walked to the kitchen. I needed a glass of water. I needed to think clearly. I flicked on the light, and the sudden glare made me blink. Everything in my house looked normal. The table where I eat breakfast, the cups hanging in their spot, the wall clock Elijah gave me on our 30th anniversary. Everything the same, yet nothing felt the same. I poured myself water with hands that still trembled and sat down in one of the chairs. Why was Arthur so scared? And why couldn't he tell me the reason? He and I had a good relationship. After Elijah died, Arthur was one of the few people who genuinely cared for me. He helped me with heavy tasks around the house. He invited me over for coffee now and then. He was always there when I needed him. But this was different. This wasn't a courtesy visit or a favor between neighbors. This was a warning, an urgent, desperate, terrifying warning. I looked at the clock, 6:15 a.m. Outside, the sky was slowly starting to brighten, painting itself in shades of orange and rose. Any other day, I'd be getting ready to go out. Tuesdays, I always went to the Cedar Grove Community Center to help with the children's reading program. It was something I had started doing after I was widowed, a way to fill the hours, to feel useful, to avoid being alone in this house full of memories. But today, Arthur had told me not to leave, to stay locked up. Why? What could be so dangerous out there that he felt the need to come to my house at 6 in the morning to warn me? I tried to rationalize. Maybe he'd heard something on the news. Maybe there was a security alert in the neighborhood. But then, why didn't he tell me directly? Why all the mystery? And why did he tell me not to open the door, even if they looked like officials? That part unsettled me more than anything else. Officials of what? Police? Government? What kind of situation requires you to distrust the authorities? I got up and walked to the living room window. I pulled back just a corner of the curtain and looked outside. The street was empty and quiet. The trees swayed gently in the morning breeze. Everything seemed perfectly normal. Too normal, perhaps. Then I saw it. A car parked at the end of the street, right on the corner. A gray sedan with tinted windows. It didn't belong to anyone in the neighborhood, I was sure of that. I knew my neighbors' cars. This one was new, and something about the way it was parked, slightly angled, as if the driver wanted a clear view of the entire street, put my nerves on edge. Was that car there before? I didn't remember, but I also didn't usually pay attention to those things until today. I let the curtain fall and backed away from the window, feeling a rising paranoia. This was ridiculous. I was a 68-year-old, retired widow with a simple, predictable life. Who would want to hurt me? Why would anyone be watching my house? But the look on Arthur's face was still etched in my mind. The fear in his eyes was real, and Arthur was not a man who scared easily. I went back to the kitchen and made myself some coffee this time. I needed caffeine. I needed to be wide awake and think this through clearly. While the water boiled, I took out my phone. Maybe I should call someone, but who? My children lived far away. Shayla in another state, working on her law career. Jackson overseas, pursuing his dreams of being a photographer. We talked last Sunday, our routine weekly call. Everything normal, everything fine. I couldn't call them now and tell them I was scared because my neighbor told me not to leave the house. Alarm bells would ring. They'd want me to move in with one of them, to leave this house, this life, and I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. The coffee was ready, and I sat back down at the table, staring at the steaming cup. What was I supposed to do? Sit here all day waiting for what exactly to happen? Arthur said I'd understand by the afternoon. What was going to happen in the afternoon? I took a sip of coffee that barely touched my tongue. The pain brought me back to reality. I needed to calm down. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe Arthur had a nightmare or was going through something personal and didn't want to worry me with the details. The phone rang. I jumped so much I almost spilled the coffee. My heart sped up again. I looked at the screen. Unknown number. I hesitated for a moment, my finger hovering over the answer button. What if it was part of what Arthur had warned me about? But it could also be a normal call. A survey. A salesperson. I answered. Hello? Silence. I could hear someone on the other end. A soft breath, but nobody spoke. Hello? Who is this? More silence, and then a click. They hung up. I slowly lowered the phone, looking at it as if it were a strange, dangerous object. A silent call. At 6:30 in the morning, right after Arthur's warning. It wasn't a coincidence. It couldn't be. I got up again, this time with more urgency, and checked all the doors in the house. The front door was locked. The back door leading to the yard was locked. The windows were all closed. I felt like a prisoner in my own home, but I also felt a little safer. I went back to the living room and sat on the sofa, hugging a cushion to my chest. Outside, the day continued to lighten. The world was waking up as it always did, but I was in here, locked away, scared, not understanding what was happening. And the worst part of it all was the waiting. Arthur said I'd understand by the afternoon. That meant hours. Hours of being here alone, with my imagination conjuring the most terrible scenarios. I looked at the clock again. 6:45. The day had just begun, and it already felt like an eternity. The hours passed with unbearable slowness. I sat on the sofa, checking the clock every 5 minutes, feeling time crawl as if the day itself was conspiring against my sanity. I tried to distract myself. I turned on the television, but I couldn't concentrate on anything. The news talked about the weather, politics, sports, all normal, nothing that explained why my neighbor had appeared terrified at my door. I turned off the television, and silence filled the house again, that silence I knew so well, which had been my constant companion for the last 5 years. Since Elijah died, the quiet had become something familiar, almost comforting. But today was different. Today, the silence didn't comfort me. It oppressed me. I got up and walked through the house, checking the windows again, making sure everything was closed. I felt ridiculous doing this, like a paranoid old woman seeing danger where there was none. But I couldn't help it. Every noise startled me. The wind against the windows, the creaking of the house's old wood, the distant hum of a car passing on the street. I reached the room that had been Elijah's and mine for 35 years of marriage. Now it was just mine. The bed was perfectly made, the curtains half closed, his things still on the nightstand. I never had the courage to remove them. His watch, his reading glasses, the book he never finished. Sometimes I came in here just to feel him close, to remember what it was like to have someone in this house, what it was like not to be alone. The children had suggested 1,000 times that I sell the house, that I move to something smaller, more manageable. "It's too big for you alone, Mom," Shayla would say every time we talked. And she was right. This 3-bedroom house, with its big yard and long hallways, was too much for a woman my age. But it was my house. It was the place where I had built my life, where I had raised my children, where I had loved and had lost. I wasn't ready to let it go. Not yet. I went back to the living room and peeked through the window again. The gray car was still there. It hadn't moved in 2 hours. This could no longer be a coincidence. Someone was watching the street or watching me. A chill went through me. Why would anyone want to watch me? I wasn't anyone important. I was just a retired widow living off my pension and the savings Elijah had left. We had a modest life. We never had a lot of money. Elijah worked his whole life as an accountant at a mid-sized firm. He did his job, he came home, we ate dinner together, we watched TV. A simple, predictable life, without secrets or mysteries. Or so I thought. I moved away from the window and went to the kitchen. I needed to eat something, even though I wasn't hungry. I made a sandwich that I barely tasted. The food felt like a knot in my throat. My stomach was clenched shut by anxiety. The phone rang again. This time, I almost dropped it. I grabbed it with trembling hands and looked at the screen. Unknown number again. Different from the morning, but just as anonymous. I hesitated. Should I answer? What if it was the same person as before? I answered. "Hello?" Silence again. But this time I could hear something else. Background noise, as if the caller was in a public place. Distant voices, the sound of traffic. "Who is this? Why are you calling me?" Nothing. Just that soft, almost imperceptible breathing. And then, click. They hung up again. I put the phone on the table and sat down, feeling tears threaten to fall. I wasn't a woman who cried easily. I had learned to be strong when Elijah died. I had to be. But this was overwhelming me. This feeling of not knowing what was happening, of being caught up in something I didn't understand. Why were they doing this to me? What did they want from me? I looked at the clock. 10 o'clock in the morning. 4 more hours until 2 in the afternoon. 4 eternal hours. I got up and started pacing through the house again, unable to stay still. I walked past the hallway full of family photographs. Shayla and Jackson when they were little, smiling in their school uniforms. Our wedding, me in my white dress, and Elijah so young and handsome. Vacations at the beach, birthdays, graduations, a whole life captured in frames hung on the wall. I stopped in front of a photo of Elijah taken a few months before he died. He was in the garden with his gardening tools, smiling at the camera. He looked happy, healthy. No one would have imagined that 3 months later he would suffer a massive heart attack in his sleep. The doctor said it was fast, that he didn't suffer. That was supposed to comfort me, but it never did. I really missed him so much. I missed his voice, his laugh, the way he would hug me at night before bed. I missed having someone to share my days with, someone who made me feel less alone in this world. "What's going on, Elijah?" I whispered to the photograph. "Why am I so scared?" Obviously, there was no answer, just the silence of the house and the ticking of the wall clock. I kept walking and reached the den Elijah used for working from home when he brought papers from the office. I hadn't touched much of this room after his death. The children helped me pack some things, but most of it was still there. His files, his folders, his desk, kept in the meticulous way he always maintained it. I went in and sat in his chair. The old leather creaked under my weight. I ran my fingers over the surface of the desk, collecting a little of the dust that had settled over the years. Elijah spent hours here reviewing numbers, making calculations, working on things I never really understood. He was the numbers person. I was the homemaker, the mother, the one who kept everything running while he brought in the money. That's how our marriage worked, and it had never bothered me. We were a team, each with our role. But now I wondered if I had truly known my husband. Were there secrets in his life I didn't know about? Things he hid from me to protect me? I shook my head. I was being ridiculous. Elijah was a good, honest, transparent man. There were no secrets, no mysteries. It was just fear talking, making me doubt everything. I got up from the chair and was about to leave the den when I heard something that froze my blood. Footsteps outside in the yard. I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs. The steps were slow, deliberate. Someone was walking along the side of my house. I cautiously approached the den window, moving as silently as possible. The curtains were partially closed. I peered just an eye around the edge and looked outside. There was a man in my yard, tall, dressed in dark clothes, walking slowly down the side path. It wasn't anyone I knew. His hands were in his pockets, and he was looking at the house, studying it as if he were searching for something. Panic surged through me. I backed away from the window, stumbling over my own feet. Who was he? What was he doing on my property? I should call the police, but Arthur had told me not to open up for anyone, not even officials. Did that mean I shouldn't trust the police either? I looked out again, more cautious this time. The man was still there, now looking toward the windows. For one terrible second, I thought he had seen me, but he kept walking, circling the house, disappearing toward the backyard. I ran to the kitchen, which had a view of the back patio. I got there just in time to see him trying the handle of the back door. My door. He was trying to get in. I choked back a scream. The door was locked, thank goodness. But he kept trying, pushing gently, testing if it would give. I backed away from the window with my hands over my mouth, trying to control my breathing. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't real. After what felt like an eternity, the footsteps moved away. I looked again. The man was gone, disappearing the same way he had arrived. I dropped into a kitchen chair, trembling from head to toe. Someone had tried to break into my house. Someone was watching me, following me, testing my doors. Arthur was right. Something terrible was happening. I looked at the clock through tear-filled eyes. 11:30 in the morning. There were still 2.5 hours to go. How much more could I endure? I grabbed my phone with shaky hands and typed a message to Arthur. Someone was in my yard, tried to open my door. I'm scared. What's going on? I sent the message and waited, staring at the screen in desperation. The minutes passed. 1, 2, 10. No reply. Please, Arthur, answer me. Nothing. The silence in my house was now deafening. Every shadow seemed to move. Every sound was a threat. I felt like a cornered animal waiting for the moment the predator would finally attack. And the worst part was, I didn't even know who the predator was, or why they had chosen me. The phone rang at exactly 12 o'clock noon, as if the caller had been waiting for that precise moment. This time it wasn't an unknown number. The screen simply said, Police Department. My heart leaped. With trembling hands, I slid my finger to answer. Hello, Mrs. Alara Vance? It was a masculine voice, official, serious. Yes, this is me. Mrs. Vance, this is Detective Carter with the police department. I need you to stay calm and listen to what I'm about to tell you. The tone of his voice made my stomach churn. Something bad had happened. Something very bad. What? What's going on? Ma'am, where are you located right now? The question threw me off. Why did he need to know where I was? I'm at my house. Why? What's wrong? There was a pause on the other end. I could hear voices in the background, movement, as if the detective was in the middle of something important. Mrs. Vance, I need you to confirm something for me. Were you at the Cedar Grove Community Center this morning? I froze. The Cedar Grove Community Center was exactly where I went every Tuesday at 9 in the morning, where I would have been if Arthur hadn't warned me to stay home. I didn't answer, feeling my voice tremble. "No, I've been here at my house all morning. Why? What happened?" Another pause, this time longer. When the detective spoke again, his tone was different, more cautious, more concerned. "Ma'am, this morning at 9:20, there was an incident at the community center. A serious incident, and we have multiple testimonies from people who assure us they saw you there." I felt like the floor was opening up beneath me. "What? No, that's impossible. I wasn't there. I'm telling you, I've been at my house all morning." "I understand, ma'am, but I need you to understand the gravity of the situation. There are witnesses who identified you. There are even recordings from the center's security cameras." "That can't be. It has to be a mistake. I didn't leave my house." "Mrs. Vance, is there anyone who can corroborate that you were at home this morning? Any family member? Any neighbor?" I thought of Arthur, but he had specifically warned me not to open the door to anyone. That included the police. Besides, he hadn't answered my message. I had no way to prove where I had been. "I was alone, but I swear to you, I didn't leave." "What incident? What happened?" The detective sighed on the other end of the line. "I'd rather not give details over the phone, ma'am. I need you to come down to the station so we can clear this up." "Go to the station? Am I being accused of something?" "I'm not saying that, ma'am. We just need you to come in and give your statement and help us understand what happened. This is very serious." My mind was a chaos of contradictory thoughts. Arthur had told me not to leave, not to open up, even for officials. But now the police were asking me to come to the station. What was I supposed to do? I need time to process this. Can I come later?" "Mrs. Vance, I really need you to come now. If you weren't at the center, as you claim, then we have a much bigger problem. Someone is using your identity." The words fell on me like stones. Someone is using my identity. What did that mean? Someone was impersonating me? Why? I don't understand any of this. How is it possible that someone— "That's why we need you to come in, ma'am, to resolve this. I can send a patrol car to pick you up if you prefer." "No!" The word came out louder than I intended. "No, let me think. I need a moment. Mrs. Vance, if you don't come in voluntarily, I'll have to—" I hung up. I knew it was stupid. I knew I probably made things worse, but panic overcame me. I dropped the phone onto the sofa and put my hands over my head. What was happening? How was it possible that there were witnesses who saw me in a place I hadn't been? And what incident had occurred? The detective said it was serious. How serious? The phone rang again immediately. The police department again. I didn't answer. It kept ringing, 1, 2, 3 times, until it finally stopped. I got up and started pacing back and forth across the living room, trying to think, trying to make sense of it all. Someone had impersonated me. Someone who knew exactly where I went on Tuesday mornings. Someone who knew my routine. And something had happened. Something serious enough that the police were calling me. Something they were now blaming me for. I ran to the window and looked outside. The gray car was no longer in its spot. Now there was a police cruiser parked at the end of the street. 2 officers were inside, looking toward my house. Fear turned into pure terror. I backed away from the window, my heart pounding so hard I thought I was going to faint. This was real. Everything was real. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't overreacting. Something terrible was happening, and I was at the center of it all. I grabbed my phone again and wrote to Arthur again, this time with more desperation. The police called. They say they saw me at the community center, that something serious happened. There's a patrol car outside my house. Arthur, please, I need you to help me. I need you to explain what's going on. I sent the message and waited, tears streaming down my cheeks. This time, the reply came almost immediately. "Don't open the door. No matter what they say, I'm on my way. Give me 20 minutes. 20 minutes? I had to hold out for 20 more minutes. I looked out the window again. The officers were still in the cruiser, but now one of them was talking on the radio, probably reporting that I was home, that I hadn't left, that I wasn't answering their calls. How long before they decided to come get me? Did they have an arrest warrant? Could they enter my house without my permission? I didn't know anything about law. I had never had problems with the police in my life. I had been an exemplary citizen for 68 years, and now I was hiding in my own house, terrified of the very officers who were supposed to protect me. The phone rang again. This time, it was a number I didn't recognize, but different from the previous ones. I hesitated to answer, but something in me needed to know more. I answered. "Hello, Mrs. Vance?" It was a feminine voice this time, young, nervous. "Who is this?" "My name is Betrayal. I work at the Cedar Grove Community Center. Ma'am, I need to talk to you. It's about what happened this morning." My breathing quickened. "What happened? No one wants to tell me exactly what happened." It's complicated. The woman who was here this morning, the one we all thought was you, she did something terrible. She stole money from the donation box, over $3,000 we had raised for the scholarship program. And not only that, she also took files from the administrative office, personal documents of several volunteers and program participants. I sank onto the sofa, feeling my legs fail me. "But I didn't do it. I didn't do that. Why would they do this to me?" "I know," Betrayal said, and her voice sounded genuinely confused. "That's why I'm calling you, because something doesn't add up. That woman looked a lot like you, Mrs. Vance, a whole lot. But when I saw her up close, something was wrong. Her eyes, the way she walked, how she talked, it was you, but it wasn't you. Do you understand what I mean?" "I don't understand anything. How is it possible that someone looks so much like me? And why? To steal $3,000? "That's what doesn't make sense," Betrayal continued. $3,000 is money, yes, but someone who went to the trouble of impersonating you, of knowing your routine, your schedule, why risk it for that amount? And the files she took were specific records, as if she knew exactly what she was looking for." "What kind of files?" "I can't give details, ma'am, but they were sensitive documents, personal information. The director is furious and the police are investigating, but I just felt I had to call you because when I saw that woman this morning, something inside me told me something was wrong. And now that I know it wasn't really you, it all makes more sense." "Did you tell this to the police?" "Yes, but they're focused on finding you. They have your fingerprints on the box, witnesses who identified you. For them, it's an open and shut case." "My fingerprints? How can they have my fingerprints if I wasn't there?" There was an awkward silence on the other end. "I don't know, ma'am, but they have them. Detective Carter told me." I hung up the phone, feeling like I was going to vomit. My fingerprints. How was that possible? How could someone have my fingerprints? Then I remembered. 2 months ago, I had gone to the bank to renew some documents. They asked for my digital fingerprints for the new debit card. A standard procedure, they said. Something for extra security. It was possible that someone had accessed that information, that they had used it. I looked at the clock. 10 minutes had passed since Arthur's message. 10 more minutes. But then I heard something that froze my blood. Footsteps on the porch, knocking on the door. But they weren't desperate knocks like Arthur's this morning. They were firm, authoritative knocks. "Mrs. Vance, Police Department, we need you to open the door." I was paralyzed in the middle of the living room, looking at the door as if it were a living creature about to devour me. The knocking continued, more insistent each time. "Mrs. Vance, we know you're in there. Please open the door. We just want to talk to you." It was Detective Carter's voice, the same voice I had heard on the phone minutes earlier. But hearing it on the other side of my door, so close, terrified me in a way I couldn't explain. Arthur had told me not to open up, not to trust anyone, not even officials. But how could I not open for the police? Wouldn't refusing just make everything worse? "Ma'am, if you don't open voluntarily, we'll have to consider other options. We don't want to go there." Other options? What did that mean? Breaking down the door? A warrant? My mind tried to process all the possibilities while my feet remained glued to the floor. I slowly approached the door without making a sound and looked through the peephole. It was 2 men dressed in dark suits. One of them, the one who had been speaking, was about 50, with graying hair and a serious expression. The other was younger, standing slightly behind, looking around the porch as if he expected someone else to appear. "We just want to clarify the community center situation," the detective continued. "If you truly weren't there, as you claim, then we need your help finding the person who was." It's as simple as that. It sounded reasonable, logical, exactly what a real detective would say. But something in his tone, in the way he looked at me through the peephole, told me this wasn't that simple. "I need to speak with my attorney first," I finally said, surprising myself with how firm my voice sounded. The two men exchanged glances. "Ma'am, you are not being accused of anything yet. We just need your statement. You don't need an attorney for a conversation." Yet, that word echoed in my mind. I wasn't being accused yet, but I would be soon if I didn't cooperate. "I prefer to wait anyway." The detective sighed, and for a moment I thought they would leave. But then he pulled something out of his pocket, a photograph. "Can you at least look at this, Mrs. Vance?" He brought it close to the peephole. It was a security camera image, grainy and black and white, but clear. It showed a woman entering the community center, a woman who looked exactly like me. My heart stopped. It was like looking in a mirror, the same height, the same haircut, the same way of walking. She even wore similar clothes to what I would have worn, dark slacks and a light blouse with a cardigan over it. "That's you, Mrs. Vance." I couldn't answer. I was too shocked. Who was that woman? How was it possible that she looked so much like me? "She has your face, your build, your way of dressing." The center employees recognized her immediately. "They even called her by name and she answered," he pressed. "Are you telling me you have a twin no one knows about?" "I don't have any siblings," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if they had heard me. The detective put the photograph away, and his expression hardened. "Mrs. Vance, this isn't going to disappear. The longer you go without cooperating, the worse this will look for you. I suggest you reconsider your decision. I already told you I wasn't there. I don't know who that woman is, but it's not me." "Then help us prove it. Come with us. Give your statement. Allow us to take your fingerprints for comparison." "You already have my fingerprints," I interrupted. "You said you found them at the scene." Another exchange of glances between the two men. The younger one approached and whispered something in the detective's ear. Carter nodded slowly. "That's true, we have them. Which makes your insistence that you weren't there even harder to believe. Do you understand the situation you're putting yourself in?" Yes, I understood. I perfectly understood that someone had planned this very carefully. Someone who knew where I went, how I dressed, how I talked. Someone who had somehow gotten hold of my fingerprints. This wasn't a random robbery. It was a calculated operation. But why? Why me? "I'm going to give you 5 minutes to open this door, Mrs. Vance," the detective said. And now his voice held a threatening tone. 5 minutes. After that, we're going to have to take more drastic measures. They backed away from the porch and walked toward the cruiser still parked on the street. I watched them talking to each other, one of them making a call on his radio. I backed away from the door, my legs trembling. Where was Arthur? 15 minutes had already passed. I needed him to get here, to explain what the hell was going on. I went back to the living room window and watched. The two men were still next to the cruiser, waiting. The younger one kept checking his watch. Detective Carter was talking on the phone, gesturing with his hands as if he were arguing with someone. Then I saw another car approaching on the street, a black sedan newer than the other cars in the neighborhood. It parked behind the cruiser, and a woman got out. She wore a formal suit and sunglasses, even though the day was overcast. She approached Detective Carter, and they started talking. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but the conversation seemed tense. The woman pointed toward my house. The detective shook his head. She insisted. Who was she? Another detective? A prosecutor? My phone vibrated. A message from Arthur. 2 blocks away. Don't open the door. No matter what happens, don't open. 2 blocks. He was almost here. I just needed to hold out a little longer. But then the woman in the suit started walking toward my house. Not toward the front door, but toward the side. The same path the man in dark clothes had taken this morning. She disappeared from my sight. I ran to the kitchen to see what she was doing. I saw her walking along the side yard, looking at the windows, studying the house. She reached the back door and, to my horror, pulled something out of her purse. A small metallic tool. She was trying to force the lock. Panic completely overwhelmed me. I grabbed the first thing I found, a kitchen knife from the drawer, and stood there trembling, not knowing what to do. The woman kept working on the lock. I could hear the small metallic clicks. It was only a matter of time before she managed to open it. Then I heard a car engine accelerating. Through the front window, I saw Arthur's car skidding to a stop in front of my house. He leaped out of the vehicle and ran toward Detective Carter, yelling something I couldn't hear. The two men confronted each other. Arthur gesticulated wildly, pointing toward my house, toward the officers. The detective tried to calm him, but Arthur didn't stop. And at that moment, I heard the final click of the back lock opening. The door opened slowly, and the woman in the suit stepped into my kitchen, taking off her sunglasses. When I saw her face clearly, I felt the world stop. She had my face. She didn't look like me. She was me. Every wrinkle, every mark, every detail. She smiled, and it was the most terrifying smile I had ever seen on my own face. "Hello, Elara," she said, using my own voice. "I think you and I need to have a very serious conversation." I stumbled backward until I hit the wall, the knife trembling in my hand. The woman calmly closed the door behind her, never taking her eyes off me. It was like standing in front of a living mirror, but a mirror that moved by its own will, that breathed, that smiled with a coldness I had never seen in my own reflection. "Don't scream," she said, raising her hands in a gesture of peace that conveyed no reassurance. "If you scream, the people outside are going to come in. And trust me, you don't want that to happen. Who are you?" My voice came out barely as a raspy whisper. "That's a complicated question," she replied, walking slowly toward the kitchen table and sitting down as if she were in her own home. "Let's just say I'm someone who knows your life very well. Every detail, every habit, every little secret. What do you want from me?" She tilted her head, studying me with those eyes that were identical to mine, yet looked completely different. There was something calculating in them, something ruthless. "It's not what I want. It's what other people want. I'm just the messenger, the enforcer, if you prefer to call it that." "I don't understand anything you're saying." "I know. And that is precisely the reason why we are in this situation. Your ignorance, Elara, your blessed and convenient ignorance about who your husband truly was." The mention of Elijah made something inside me snap. Fury replaced fear for a moment. "Don't you dare talk about him. You don't know anything about my husband." She laughed, and the sound was unsettling coming from my own face. "That I don't know anything? Oh, Elara, I know more about Elijah than you did in 35 years of marriage. I know about the hidden accounts, the encrypted files, the secret meetings. I know about what he discovered and what he tried to do with that information." "You're lying. Elijah was an accountant. He worked with numbers, with companies, with corrupt companies," she interrupted. "With dirty politicians, with very powerful people who moved money in highly illegal ways. And your dear Elijah, the honest, hard-working accountant, decided he had to do the right thing. He decided to gather evidence, document everything, and prepare to expose these people." I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor, still clutching the knife. This couldn't be real. Elijah had never mentioned any of this to me. Why would he have done that? Why would he risk everything? "Because he was a noble idiot," she said with disdain. "Because he believed in justice and doing the right thing, even if it meant endangering his family. And look at him now, 5 years dead, and you're here paying for his decisions. His death was a heart attack. The doctor confirmed it." She looked at me with something resembling pity. "Are you really that naive? Men of 58 in perfect health don't suffer massive heart attacks out of nowhere, especially when they are about to hand over incriminating evidence to the authorities." The words hit me like punches. It couldn't be true. It couldn't be that Elijah had been murdered, and I never knew it. It couldn't be that all this time— "Why now?" I asked, tears starting to roll down my cheeks. "Why are they coming for me after 5 years? Because we found something. A trail Elijah left, a clue suggesting he didn't take all the evidence to the grave, that he left a backup copy, and we believe you know where it is. I don't know anything. I swear to you, I don't know anything about any evidence. That's what you said 6 months ago when we intercepted you at the bank, remember? We asked for your digital fingerprints for the new security card, a completely routine procedure. The memory came back to me with terrifying clarity. The bank employee, insistent but kind, the digital scanner, the way she assured me it was only for my protection. It was you. It was me. We needed your prints to be able to use them today, to make the community center robbery look like your fault, to leverage you, to pressure you to cooperate. But I don't know where that evidence is. Elijah never told me anything. She got up from the chair and approached me, crouching down to my level. Her closeness made my stomach turn. Then you're going to have to remember. You're going to have to think about every conversation you had in his last days, every strange comment, every unexpected gift, every place he asked you to go or avoid. Because he told you something, Alara. He left you something. Men like Elijah always leave something to protect their wives. Outside, I heard Arthur's voice yelling, still arguing with the detective. How much longer could he keep them busy? What if I truly don't know anything? What will you do then? She stood up, looking down at me with a cold expression. Then you're going to prison for robbery and identity fraud. We have your prints on the donation box, multiple witnesses, and video recordings that clearly show you at the crime scene. They are going to give you years, Alara. Years locked up, away from your children, slowly dying in a cell. You can't do this. It's already done, unless you give me what I want. The front door burst open. Arthur stormed into the house, immediately followed by Detective Carter and the other officer. Arthur saw me on the floor. He saw the woman standing over me, and his face went white. "Get away from her," Arthur commanded, his voice filled with an authority I had never heard from him. The woman turned toward them, showing no sign of surprise or concern. "Arthur Stone, it's been years. Still the loyal guardian, are you?" I said get away from her. Detective Carter looked confusedly between the woman and me, noticing the impossible similarity for the first time. What the hell is going on here? Arthur moved quickly, positioning himself between the woman and me, helping me to stand with his free hand. In his other hand, he held something that made my heart stop, an old, worn yellow envelope. "It's time Alara knew the truth," Arthur said, looking directly at the woman. "The whole truth." He handed the envelope to me. I took it with trembling hands. On the front, written in Elijah's unmistakable handwriting, it said, "For Alara, open only with Arthur." "What is this?" "Your answer," Arthur replied, "and also your damnation, depending on how you choose to use it." The woman took a step toward us, but Detective Carter finally reacted, blocking her path. "Nobody moves until someone explains to me what's happening. Mrs. Vance, or whoever you are, stay where you are." I looked at the envelope in my hands, feeling its weight as if it contained the entire life I thought I knew and all the lies that supported it. Elijah had known. He had known this would happen someday, and he had left me something important enough that dangerous people would come looking for it 5 years later. "Open it, Alara," Arthur urged. "It's time you knew who your husband really was and who you are now that he's no longer here to protect you." With shaky fingers, I began to open the envelope, knowing that what I found inside would change everything forever. The envelope contained a letter folded in 3 parts, handwritten in Elijah's careful script. Just seeing it made me feel his presence, as if he were right there with me, trying to explain something he never had the courage to tell me in life. With trembling hands, I began to read as everyone in the kitchen waited in silence. "My dearest Alara, if you are reading this, it means the danger I feared has finally arrived. It means I am no longer here to protect you, and that Arthur has kept his promise to watch over you when I couldn't. Forgive me for the lies. Forgive me for building our life on secrets you never should have had to carry. But please understand that every decision I made was to keep you safe, you and our children." I had to stop, tears making the words blurry. Arthur put a hand on my shoulder, giving me the strength to continue. For 20 years, I worked as an accountant for legitimate companies, but 8 years ago, one of my clients asked me to review certain accounts for a construction company. What I found was much bigger than I imagined. A massive money laundering scheme involving high-level politicians, federal judges, influential businessmen. They were moving millions of dollars through fake projects, inflated contracts, and diverted public funds. My breath caught. Elijah had uncovered a network of corruption. Why had he never told me? At first, I tried to ignore it, Alara. I wanted to pretend I hadn't seen anything, but I couldn't. I couldn't sleep knowing those people were stealing money that should have gone to hospitals, schools, social programs, money that could have saved lives. So I started keeping copies, documents, transfers, emails, everything that proved their guilt. The woman with my face let out a bitter laugh from where the detective kept her guarded. Your noble husband, so brave, so stupid. Arthur shot her a murderous glare, but didn't say anything. I continued reading. I contacted an investigative reporter named Marcus Reed. We planned to make all the information public, but someone found us out. Marcus died in a supposed car accident 2 weeks before we could publish. That's when I knew they would come for me too, so I took precautions. I hid all the evidence in a safe place. A place only you could find, Alara, because it's connected to a memory only we share. My heart pounded. What memory? What was he talking about? Remember our 25th anniversary? The trip we took, the place where we renewed our vows, the small box we buried under the tree with our written promises inside? Everything is there, my love. Every document, every piece of proof, every name is waiting for someone brave enough to use them. The letter continued, but my hands were shaking so much that Arthur had to hold it for me so I could keep reading. Arthur knows everything. He was my confidant, my protector. I asked him to watch over you from a distance, never to tell you anything unless the danger was imminent. Trust him as I trusted him. And forgive me, Alara. Forgive me for leaving you alone with this burden. But if you are reading this, it's because you now have a decision to make. You can turn over the evidence and complete what I started, risking your own safety. Or you can destroy it and live the rest of your life in peace, though that peace will be built on silence. I won't judge you for whatever decision you make. Just know that I love you, that I always loved you, and that my greatest regret is not being there to face this with you. Yours always, Elijah. I let the letter drop, feeling as if my heart had been ripped from my chest. All this time, 5 years, believing I had known my husband, when in reality I had been living with a stranger, a brave, foolish stranger who had decided to confront powerful people without even telling me. Our 25th anniversary, I whispered. We went to the cabin in the mountains 2 hours from here. Arthur nodded slowly. The cabin you rented for a week, where you renewed your vows under that old oak tree. The memories returned with painful clarity. It had been one of the most beautiful moments of our marriage. Elijah had organized everything: the small, cozy cabin, the private ceremony with just the two of us, the tree under which we promised to love each other for another 25 years. We had written our promises on papers and buried them in a small metal box at the foot of the tree, saying we would one day return to find them. We never went back. 2 years later, Elijah was dead. The documents are there, I said, more to myself than to the others, buried under the tree. The woman with my face stepped forward, but Detective Carter stopped her firmly. Who are you? He asked her. And don't lie to me, because I'm tired of this circus. She looked at him with disdain. I am someone contracted to retrieve something that does not belong to this family. Something Mr. Vance stole from very important people. He didn't steal anything, I spat out, finding my voice. He documented crimes. There's a difference. A difference that cost him his life, she replied coldly. And that can cost you yours if you aren't smart. Arthur stepped between us, his body tense like a spring. You are not going to touch her. Elijah made me promise, and I will keep my word until my last breath." Detective Carter ran a hand over his face, clearly trying to process all the information. "This is completely out of my jurisdiction. We're talking about conspiracy, political corruption, possible homicide. I need to call my superiors." "No," Arthur said urgently. "You don't know who you can trust. If those people have the power Elijah documented, then they have people everywhere. Police, judges, prosecutors. One call to the wrong place and Alara will be dead before morning." The words fell on me like ice water. Dead. Was I really in that much danger? "So, what do you suggest I do?" the detective asked, and for the first time I heard uncertainty in his voice. "Let us go," Arthur replied. "Let us get to that cabin, retrieve the documents, and then we will turn them over to the correct authorities. Someone outside the local system, someone federal." The woman laughed. "Do you really think they'll make it to that cabin? My employers have eyes everywhere. Before they cross the city limits, people will already be waiting for them." "Then we'll die trying," Arthur said, with a determination that scared me. "But we are not giving those documents to you to destroy." Detective Carter looked at Arthur and me, then at the woman, clearly divided between his duty and what was right. "If I let you go, I'm risking my career, possibly my life." "And if you don't," I said, finally finding my own determination, "you'll be allowing corrupt people to keep stealing and killing without consequence. My husband died trying to do the right thing. I won't let his sacrifice be in vain." There was a long silence. Outside, the other officer knocked on the door, asking if everything was okay. Detective Carter ignored him, his mind clearly working at full speed. Finally, he sighed deeply. "You have 2 hours head start. After that, I have to report this. And may God help us all." Arthur grabbed my arm and pulled me out of the house through the back door while Detective Carter stayed behind, blocking the woman's path. I could hear her screaming, threatening, but her words faded as we ran through the side yard toward Arthur's car parked on the street. "Get in, quick," he ordered, opening the passenger door. I scrambled inside, and he started the car before I even finished closing the door. The tires squealed against the asphalt as he sped down the residential street. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. I looked in the side mirror and saw Detective Carter coming out of my house, talking urgently on his radio. The woman with my face, Yvette, appeared behind him, her expression full of fury. "Do you really think we'll make it to that cabin?" I asked, my voice cracking. "She said they have people everywhere." "We have to try," Arthur replied, his eyes fixed on the road as he took a turn way too fast. "Elijah didn't die so those documents could stay buried forever." We left the neighborhood and merged onto the main road. Arthur drove erratically, changing lanes constantly, taking unexpected exits to make sure no one was following us. "How did you really know Elijah?" I asked, needing to understand. "You said he told you everything. Why did he trust you?" Arthur kept his eyes on the road, but I saw his jaw clench. "Because I also worked in the shadows. 15 years ago, I was a private investigator. I specialized in corporate fraud cases. Elijah hired me when he started to suspect something was wrong with his clients. What we found together was much worse than either of us imagined." "Why didn't you ever tell me? All these years, living 3 houses down, helping me with the garden, having coffee with me, it was all a lie." "It wasn't a lie," he said firmly. "My care for you is real, Alara, but I had orders from Elijah. I was only supposed to reveal the truth if your life was in imminent danger, and until today, it wasn't." "How did you know today was the day?" "Because I've been seeing strange movements for months. Unfamiliar cars in the neighborhood, people watching your house. Someone checked your trash last week. I knew they were preparing for something. When I intercepted a conversation early this morning, I knew it was today. That's why I came to warn you." He took another exit off the highway and onto a less traveled secondary route. The urban landscape began to give way to rolling hills and trees. The cabin was in the mountains, far from the city, in a remote place Elijah had chosen precisely for its privacy. "How much longer?" I asked. "An hour and a half, if no one stops us. But we can't take the direct route. I'm going to circle around, use back roads. It will take longer, but it's safer. I checked the rearview mirror. For now, the road behind us was empty, but I knew that wouldn't last. That woman, whoever she was, wouldn't give up so easily. "Who is she?" I asked. "How is it possible that she looks so much like me?" Arthur shifted gears as we climbed a steep hill. "Her name is Yvette. She's a specialist. These criminal organizations use people like her to infiltrate, to supplant identities. They have perfected techniques with prosthetic makeup, minor surgery, voice training. She's probably been studying you for months. Every gesture, every expression, every way you move." The idea turned my stomach. Someone had been observing me, analyzing me, preparing to become me. And Detective Carter, do you think he'll really give us 2 hours? I hope so. He seemed like an honest man in a corrupt system. But we can't trust anyone, except ourselves. We continued driving in silence for several minutes. The landscape became increasingly green, more rugged. We passed through small mountain towns where life seemed to move slower, where people knew nothing about conspiracies or hidden documents or women who stole identities. "Did you ever regret it?" I asked suddenly. "Helping Elijah. If you hadn't, maybe he'd still be alive." Arthur gripped the steering wheel tightly. "Every day. But I also know that Elijah would have done the same with or without my help. He was a man of principle. He couldn't stand by while he saw so much corruption. And he left me alone. He left me with this burden. He left you the truth and the choice of what to do with it." We reached a small mountain town, and Arthur pulled into a gas station. We needed fuel, and it was also an opportunity to check if anyone was following us. "Stay in the car," he said. "Keep your head down." While he filled the tank, I looked around nervously. There were few people: an old trucker drinking coffee, a family with children buying snacks. Everything seemed normal. Too normal. Arthur paid quickly and returned to the car, but before starting the engine, he looked at his phone and his face went pale. "What's wrong?" He showed me the screen. It was a text message from an unknown number. It contained only one photograph: the mountain cabin, our cabin, and underneath, a short message: "We're waiting for you." My blood froze. They already knew where we were going. How was that possible? "They must have tracked my phone," Arthur said, turning it off immediately and removing the battery. "Or yours. Give me your cell." I handed him my phone, and he did the same, tearing out the battery and tossing both phones into a nearby trash can. "Without phones, we can't call for help if something goes wrong," I said. "But they can't track us either. It's a necessary trade." He started the car again, but now his expression was much darker. "If they're already at the cabin, what do? We can't just show up there." Arthur drove in silence for a minute, thinking. Then he turned onto a dirt road that went deep into the woods. "I know another way to get there. A trail hunters used years ago. It will drop us off at the back of the property. We can approach without being seen, and if that doesn't work, then we improvise. But we are not going to give up, Ilara. Not after coming this far." The dirt road was rough and full of potholes. Arthur's car protested with every obstacle, but he kept going, driving deeper and deeper into the forest. The sunlight barely filtered through the tops of the trees, creating long, ominous shadows. "When was the last time you came through here?" I asked, clinging to the seat as the car bounced over a rock. "Years ago. I used to come hunting with my father. I hope the trail is still passable." It didn't look very passable, but Arthur refused to stop. Finally, after 20 torturous minutes, we reached a small clearing. He parked the car behind some dense bushes, hiding it as best he could. "From here, we go on foot. It's about a 20-minute walk to the cabin." We got out of the car, and the silence of the forest enveloped us. All I could hear was the wind through the leaves and the distant chirping of some birds. Arthur opened the trunk and pulled out a small backpack containing flashlights, water, and something that made my heart stop. A gun. "Do you really think that will be necessary?" I asked, pointing to the pistol he was tucking into his belt. "I hope not. But Elijah made me promise to protect you no matter what, and I'm going to keep that promise." We started walking along the barely visible trail between the trees. Every step took me further away from the world I knew and closer to an uncertain future. I carried Elijah's letter folded carefully in my pocket. His words resonated in my mind. You have a decision to make, but did I really have a choice after everything that had happened? After knowing that my husband had been murdered, that I had spent 5 years living in ignorance, could I simply turn my back? No, not anymore. Elijah had started this, but I was going to finish it. There it is, Arthur whispered, pointing through the trees. I could see the cabin in the distance, and just as the message had warned, there were 2 SUVs parked outside. We were not alone. We crouched behind a fallen log, observing the cabin from our hidden position. The 2 parked cars were black SUVs with tinted windows. I couldn't see how many people were inside the cabin, but I knew they weren't there to welcome us. The tree is on the other side, I whispered to Arthur, behind the cabin, near the small stream. He studied the terrain, calculating distances and angles. If we move to the left, following the tree line, we can get there without them seeing us from the windows, but we have to be silent. A single noise, and they'll know we're here. They already know, Arthur. It's a risk we have to take. We started moving slowly, crouching, using the trees and bushes as cover. Every branch that cracked under our feet made me hold my breath. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it from the cabin. It took almost 10 minutes to cover what would normally have been a 2-minute walk. But we finally reached the back of the property, and there it was, the old oak tree under which Elijah and I had renewed our vows 25 years ago. It looked older now, more gnarled, but it was still majestic. Its roots spread across the ground like ancient veins. Somewhere under those roots was the box we had buried, the box that now contained much more than our promises of love. "Do you remember exactly where you buried it?" Arthur asked in a barely audible voice. I closed my eyes, trying to remember. We had stood in front of the tree, Elijah digging with a small spade. I held the metal box. He had chosen a spot between 2 large roots on the side facing the stream. "There," I pointed, "between those 2 roots." Arthur pulled a small folding shovel from his backpack and began to dig carefully, trying to make as little noise as possible. The earth was more compact than we expected. Years of rain and root growth had sealed the spot like a tomb. Every movement of the shovel made me more nervous. How long before someone came out of the cabin? Before they discovered us? After what felt like an eternity, Arthur's shovel hit something metallic. We both froze, listening if anyone had heard the sound. Nothing. Just the whisper of the wind and the murmur of the nearby stream. Arthur cleared the dirt with his hands, slowly revealing a rusty metal box. It was larger than I remembered. Elijah had replaced our small box of promises with something much more substantial. He pulled it out of the hole carefully. It was sealed with a combination lock. Arthur looked at me. "Do you have any idea what the combination might be?" I thought quickly. Elijah always used significant dates for his passwords and combinations. Our wedding date, the children's birthdays. But this was different. This was something only I should be able to open. Then I knew. The date of our 25th anniversary, when we buried the original box. 08/27/97. August 27th, 97. I turned the dial with trembling fingers. The lock clicked and opened. Inside were documents, many documents, folders full of papers, USB drives, external hard drives. Elijah had meticulously documented everything: names, dates, amounts, bank transfers. It was a complete encyclopedia of corruption. "My God," Arthur whispered, quickly flipping through some papers. "This is bigger than we thought. There are national-level politicians here, high-level federal judges, businessmen who control entire industries." "How much money?" I asked. "Hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe more. Decades of systematic theft of public funds." Suddenly we heard voices. They were coming from the cabin. Arthur quickly closed the box and put it in his backpack. "We have to go now." We started backing up toward the tree line, but then the back door of the cabin opened. 2 men came out, both armed, starting to sweep the perimeter. "Don't move," Arthur whispered. "If we move, they'll see us." We stayed frozen behind a dense bush, barely breathing. One of the men was walking directly toward us. 30 feet. 15. 5. Arthur put his hand on the gun in his belt. I closed my eyes, praying silently. The man stopped barely 15 feet from our position. He took out a cigarette and lit it, looking out into the woods. For a terrible moment, I thought he had seen us, but then his radio crackled. "Anything back there?" It was the voice of Yvette, the woman with my face. "Nothing, just trees. Maybe they're not coming after all." "They'll come. They have no other choice. Keep your eyes open." The man took another drag of his cigarette, tossed the butt, and walked back toward the cabin. Arthur and I waited another 30 seconds before daring to move. "Go," Arthur whispered, slow and quiet. We began to retreat, step by step, moving away from the cabin. But I knew this wasn't over. They would control all the exit roads. They would be waiting for us. "Arthur," I whispered when we were far enough away, "we can't just leave. They're going to follow us. They're going to chase us until they get those documents." "I know. That's why we're not running away." He looked at me with a determination that scared me. "We're going to end this right here, right now." Elijah had contacts, people he trusted. Before I threw away the phones, I sent a message to one of them. A federal prosecutor Elijah knew, someone who is outside the corrupt local system. I gave him these coordinates. He should be arriving with backup in less than 30 minutes. 30 minutes, Arthur. We can't hold out for 30 minutes against armed people. We don't have to hold out. We just have to not be found. We returned to the car, but instead of leaving, Arthur pulled more things out of the trunk. Flares, a rope, a hunting knife. "What are you doing?" "Preparing. If they find us before the feds arrive, I need to make sure these documents don't fall into the wrong hands." He opened the box again and pulled out one of the USB drives. He handed it to me. "Hold on to this. If something happens to me, if we get separated, you take this to the authorities, understand? No matter what happens, this drive has to get to safety." I took the small USB drive, feeling it heavy in my hand despite its tiny size. In this small object was Elijah's life and death, his legacy, his truth. "Arthur, I'm scared." He put his hands on my shoulders, looking directly into my eyes. "Elara, your husband made me promise to take care of you. But now I understand that you don't need to be taken care of. You're stronger than you think. Elijah knew it. That's why he left this to you, because he knew you would have the courage to do the right thing when the time came." Tears rolled down my cheeks, but I wiped them away with determination. He was right. I was no longer the scared widow hiding in her house. I was no longer the woman living in ignorance. Now I knew the truth, and the truth demanded action. "What do you need me to do?" "I need you to stay here. Hidden. If you hear shots, if anything goes wrong, you take that car and drive to the nearest town. You look for the federal police, not local. You hand them the drive and you tell them everything. Promise me." I nodded, even though every fiber of my being wanted to protest, wanted to tell him not to leave me alone. "And what are you going to do?" Arthur smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who has accepted his fate. "I'm going to make sure Elijah didn't die in vain. I'm going to keep the last promise I made to my friend." Before I could reply, we heard engines. The black SUVs were pulling away from the cabin, starting to sweep the area. They had discovered us, or at least they knew we were nearby. Arthur gently pushed me toward the car. "Hide, and no matter what happens, don't come out until it's safe." "Arthur, no!" But he was already gone, moving into the trees with the backpack containing the box of documents, leading them away from me, turning himself into the decoy. I was left alone in the car, the USB drive clutched in my hand, listening to the engines getting closer. The minutes that followed were the longest of my life. Hidden in the car, crouched in the back seat, I listened to the engines of the SUVs moving through the woods, the voices shouting orders, the footsteps running through the trees, and then the sound I feared most. Gunshots. 3 rapid shots, followed by silence, then more voices, more movement. I pressed the USB drive against my chest, praying that Arthur was okay, but knowing in my heart that he had done exactly what he promised, sacrificed himself to protect me. Silent tears streamed down my face. Elijah had died for this truth, and now Arthur too. How many more lives would it cost? When would this cycle of violence and secrets end? Then I heard something different. Sirens. Many sirens, and the unmistakable sound of helicopters approaching. Arthur's backup had arrived. What followed was chaotic. More gunshots, shouts, orders amplified by megaphones demanding that everyone put down their weapons. I stayed hidden, trembling, not daring to move a muscle until everything fell silent. Finally, someone knocked on the car window. It was a man in a ballistic vest that read FBI in large letters. Behind him, dozens of federal agents were moving through the area, arresting the people who had been hunting us. "Mrs. Vance, I'm Special Agent Davis. Arthur Stone contacted us. He's safe. He's injured, but he's going to be okay." The wave of relief that hit me almost made me pass out. I got out of the car with trembling legs, and the agent held my arm. "Do you have the documents?" I showed him the USB drive. He took it carefully, as if it were the most precious thing in the world, and perhaps it was. "This is going to change a lot of things, ma'am. A lot of very powerful people are going to fall because of what your husband documented." They took me to where Arthur was being treated by paramedics. He had a bullet wound in his shoulder, but he was conscious and smiling when he saw me. "We did it," he said weakly. "Elijah would be proud." I knelt beside him, taking his hand. "You're a fool. You could have died." But I didn't. And now the truth is going to come out. I watched Yvette being handcuffed and put into one of the federal vehicles. When she passed me, our eyes met. There was no similarity between us anymore. She was just another criminal being brought to justice. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Elijah's documents unleashed the biggest corruption scandal in decades. 14 high-level politicians were arrested, including 2 senators and a governor. Judges, businessmen, public officials, they all fell like dominoes. The money laundering scheme had moved over $300 million over 20 years. Elijah's name was vindicated. The media called him a hero, a brave accountant who dared to stand up to the corrupt system. His death was officially reclassified as homicide, and new investigations were opened. Arthur recovered from his injury and was recognized for his bravery. Detective Carter, who had given us those 2 crucial hours, was promoted and put in charge of a new anti-corruption task force. But for me, none of that mattered as much as the truth. I finally knew who my husband had really been. Not the quiet man who read the newspaper every morning, but the silent hero who risked everything to do the right thing. 3 months later, I returned to the cabin, this time alone, on a sunny, peaceful day. I walked to the old oak tree and sat in its shade, touching the earth where we had buried our promises so many years ago. I took out a new letter I had written, folded carefully. In it, I told Elijah everything that had happened, how I had found my courage, how I had completed his mission. I told him I forgave him for the secrets, that I understood why he had done it, and I promised him I would live the rest of my life honoring his memory, not by hiding from the world, but by facing it with the same bravery he had shown. I dug a small hole and buried the letter under the tree, along with the ashes of the fear I had carried for so many years. When I stood up to leave, I felt different. I was no longer the fragile, scared widow who had been awakened by desperate knocking at her door. I was a woman who had faced danger, who had uncovered terrible truths, who had risked her life for justice. I was a woman who now knew that the truth, no matter how painful, is always worth discovering, because the truth is the only thing that truly sets us free. I drove back home as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky with orange and rose colors. Shayla and Jackson were coming to visit that weekend. We had a lot to talk about, many things to heal, but now we could do it with honesty. without secrets separating us. My house no longer felt like a prison. It felt like a home, a place where I had loved, where I had lost, where I had discovered my own strength. And every night before bed, I looked at Elijah's photograph on my nightstand and whispered the same words to him. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for believing I would be strong enough. And thank you for loving me enough to protect me, even after your death. Because in the end, that's what it had all been. A final act of love from a man who knew his wife had the courage inside her to change the world, if only she were given the opportunity to discover it. And I had discovered it. The truth had come to light, justice had prevailed, and I had learned that it's never too late to become the hero of your own story. That morning, when Arthur knocked on my door at 6 a.m. with his desperate warning, I was just a scared woman. But by the end of the day, I had become something much greater. I had become someone who refused to live in ignorance, who chose truth over comfort, who risked everything to do the right thing. And that, I discovered, was the most important lesson Elijah had wanted to teach me. Not that I should be protected from the world, but that I had the strength to face it. Now, every morning when I wake up, I look out my bedroom window and see a new day full of possibilities. I am no longer afraid of shadows or secrets, because I have learned that the light always finds a way to shine, no matter how much they try to hide it. And that light now lives in me, guiding me forward, reminding me that I am stronger than I ever imagined. I am the guardian of Elijah's legacy. I am a survivor. I am a fighter. I am a Lara Vance, and my story doesn't end here. It's just beginning. You know, looking back now, I realize something important. All my life, I thought being safe meant staying quiet and avoiding trouble. But that morning, when Arthur knocked on my door, I learned that real safety comes from facing the truth, no matter how terrifying it seems. My husband believed in justice, and for years, I thought his courage was what made him special. Now I understand. It was also his faith in me. He knew that one day, I'd find the strength to stand up for what's right. So if you're ever afraid to face something, remember this. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to act even when you're trembling. That's what truly changes your life. If you agree with me and enjoyed my story, show it by liking this video. Let's see how many of us there are. I'm curious. What city are you watching from, and what time is it there? Tell me in the comments. If you'd like to support my journey, you can send a small donation. Thank you for listening and sharing your precious time with me. For more life stories like this, explore my other videos and subscribe to my channel. On the screen, you'll see 2 new stories I'm sure you'll love. Click one and start listening right away. With love.